in the top left-hand corner, we are recording, okay? So with that in mind, I would discourage anything in the chat, or indeed if you come on and speak on the call, anything which would be GDPR sensitive, things like students' names, things like that. Avoid those sorts of comments if we can, please. Now then, let's actually make a start. So I'm going to give you a bit of a big picture first, and then we're going to go into a few specifics. Be warned, there is a bit of theory in this, and I get quite excited about the sort of the cognitive science of this stuff, so you're going to have to live with me on that one, I'm afraid. But let's actually have a look at the platform. A couple of reminders for you, first of all, in terms of assignments. I'm logged in as a teacher here, so consider me to be you here. I've got the same view as you have. And of course, our assignments are in here, and the courses as a whole are in here. We're going to use assignments because we want to structure learning for our students, okay? We want to structure learning for our students. Now, you see here, I've set my assignments to be completely blank. I've got nothing in here at all, okay? So I've just sort of reset this as if there was nothing in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up a bit of a repertoire here of assignments and tasks, which I think represents some notion of good practice. But before we do that, a reminder of what our options are. Our options are that we can expect students to watch tutorials of which they're tracked and they can make their notes and all that stuff, of course. We can ask students to write prose. This is an upload essay. This is where we might set them a past paper question or a piece of coursework or literally an essay. It could even be something like a mock exam. I think that would be an extreme case, but you've got that option there as well. Anything which is prose based, they can do via this assignment. A test yourself assignment is where you set a quiz, the curriculum of which is designed by you, okay? So the test yourself is where you set a quiz which is designed by you and you choose what's on it. The checkpoint is an end of unit test, okay? So we'll actually have a go at making all of these today, but I just wanted to remind you that these are our options in terms of platform. So watching tutorials, writing, answering a test that the teacher chooses, and answering an end of unit test. I should stress that these tests here have different conditions to them, of which we'll go into a little bit in a second, okay? So that's our kind of big picture, and be reminded that whenever we set an assignment, the following things always happen. The students are always notified, okay? So they'll be notified on the platform. We'll have a look at that in a sec. They'll also be emailed with that notification. They're also reminded that they've got an assignment open. So for example, if I was to set an assignment now, which ended next Friday, they'd get an assignment now when I create it. They'd get an assignment on Wednesday to say they've got 48 hours to go, and they'd get an email on Wednesday to say they've got 48 hours to go, and they'd get an email on Thursday saying, oi, you've got a day to go, you haven't done it yet, get on with it. It doesn't use those words, but that's effectively the message, okay? So they get notifications. Also, the content is pre-built, okay? So in other words, you don't have to make a quiz. You don't have to record a tutorial. That's already made and gets allocated to them. Everything they do is tracked and reported, and we also put it into your assignment mark book, okay? So that's what the assignments are for. We can hope that our students would choose to go and learn on the platform. And many students, by the way, will do that, okay? But assignments allow us to make the students learn, okay? And it sounds a bit heavy when I say it that way, but sometimes, quite often, we need to say to the students, these are the dates, these are the tasks, do it, okay? And that's what assignments are. And I don't mean that in a firm or a nasty way. I mean that in the sense that we set these parameters, we set our expectations, and the students succeed within those parameters. That's what we want to happen. And if someone doesn't or chooses not to, obviously we need to know that that is the case. Now, before we start setting some assignments, I want to give you what I believe are the 3 primary key tips for assignments, okay? So these are the 3 things that I personally believe make assignments successful. Now, I'm more than happy to be challenged on them and ask someone to see it differently or have a 4th or a 5th or a 7th suggestion. Excuse me. But these are the things that I believe make assignments successful. Firstly, we want our assignments to be skinny. And what I mean by skinny is we don't want an assignment to be huge in its context. Okay, so an assignment should be a chunk, a bite size, to use that phrase. I like to call them skinny assignments. Okay, and the reason I think that's really important, I'll show you some examples of this in a second. I think it's really important that when a student, think about the student as the end user. That's what we do all the time in our business. We're all the time thinking about the student as the end user. That end user, they're going to click into the assignment, and the first thought they're going to have is, can I do this or not? Is this practical or not? Do I have enough time or not? Okay, so we want to make our assignments thus that the students believe they have a great opportunity to be successful. That doesn't mean we set them one question, but it also means that we won't set them 300 questions. Okay, so we want that blend. So we want assignments to be skinny. I'll show you lots of examples of that in a second. Secondly, guys, we want our assignments to be regular. Okay, and when I talk about regularity, it's perfect common sense. Assignments should condition a behavioral response. But by the way, I'm not getting into classical and operant conditioning here, but it's kind of that. I literally want to condition a behavioral response in the student. I set an assignment with regularity or frequency, some combination of that, and the students know it's coming and know how they respond. That's the behavioral set I want from the student. So in my context, for example, that would mean that I don't have big gaps where I don't set assignments. I try and set assignments something like roughly the same part of each week. The assignments have an approximate structure to them that the students are familiar with, that the instructions that I give in the assignment have regularity to those instructions, that the standard I expect has regularity of standard. And of course, what the students then do is they gear up, they familiarize, they get used to those models and those ideas. So I really feel strongly that the ideas of skinny assignments and regular assignments are critical. And the last one, before we get into some examples, the third tip I would give you is consider what assignments are for. Okay, consider what they're for. And we believe there are 3 uses of an assignment. Okay, we think there's 3 uses. And this is just a temporal consideration, really. But we think assignments are for the following. They're for preloading knowledge. Okay, now we can call that flip learning if you want, but the idea is that on Tuesday, I've got a lesson on cell structures, and before Tuesday, I want the students to do some work on cell structures. Okay, it's just preloading knowledge. What's the impact of that? It means that on Tuesday in my lesson, I can spend more time doing things. We can answer, we can experiment, we can debate, we can exemplify, we can write, we can answer, we can mark scheme, we can model answer. So it gives me more time in my lesson to do the application stuff because they're preloading knowledge. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples of that in a second. So use 1 is preloading knowledge or flip learning. Secondly, the second use is the students are using the assignments inside my lesson time. So if I've got an hour on Tuesday, I'm setting assignments for that hour. Okay, so I want tasks done within that timetabled slot. Okay, now, not all of you will use this second example because you'll want to do your own spontaneous thing in your lesson. Of course, it's completely normal, you don't have to. But we've got that second option that I set assignments to open inside my lesson time. And thirdly, guys, and this is where those of you that have been studying Ebbinghaus, Thalheimer, Rosenshine recently will probably have your lights go on here. The third reason we would use assignments is for practice and review. Okay, and I cannot emphasize strongly enough the importance of practice and review in what should be well-structured educational programs. We literally know today that students, all human beings, forget things very rapidly unless they practice and review them over time. Now, if we had time, we'd get into that Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. We'd look at the forgetting cycle. We could look at different types of practice as according to Thalheimer. We could look at Rosenshine's 10 principles, but we'll assume some of that right now. But the point we want to make is that temporarily, we want assignments to cause the student to practice and review material over time. And if we do that, then the tendency for our learners to be able to use the correct subject vocabulary, to retain knowledge and understanding for longer, to be able to write with fluency for longer will increase. Okay, so we've got preloading, we've got during lesson, we've got practice and review. Okay, so that's the picture anyway. So I went on a bit of a monologue there, forgive me, I wasn't meaning to go into CPD mode particularly, but anyway, hopefully it's relevant. Now, Mark, I think you're picking up chat and things, so hopefully just let me know if you just jump in and let me know if you want to answer something. Okay. So guys, let's make a couple of assignments. Okay, let's go into assignments. I want to make a couple of things. So I thought today what I would do is I would set up a structure which is kind of classic for me. Okay, and then we'll talk about the parameters. So first of all, I'm going to ask my students to do some kind of flipped or preloaded learning. Okay, so I'm imagining, let's stick with that example. I've got my lesson on Tuesday. Let's say it's Tuesday afternoon, and I want my students to prepare something in order for them to be able to perform better in that lesson. So I'm going to ask them to watch something. Now, when I choose my groups, remember that you can choose more than one group here, as long as those groups are doing the same course. So if you want to set a task for your whole cohort, that's fine, okay? Now, I don't know how many schools right now, I mean, I'll just throw this out sort of a little bit, with a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of provocativeness. I don't know how many departments out there have got one person doing the delivery and the other members of the team doing other things such as marking work, setting tasks, phoning people, interacting. I mean, it could be that that's actually quite a nice division of labor. If you've got one brilliant explainer, you might want that person doing live elements while other people are doing other things. That's another timetable restrictions might not allow that, but it's an interesting thought. Now then, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose two groups. So these two groups, assignment demo 1 and assignment demo 2. They're both studying this biology course. The course today is not important, but I'm just going to use this as my example. I happen to teach this course, so it's kind of useful for me. Now, I'm going to imagine that I've just taught my students, that on Tuesday, we're going to be working on this and this. Okay, so in preparation for Tuesday, I want them studying that material. I could throw this in as well, potentially, but I want to keep my assignment skinny. Okay, this is making it, what's the word I'm going to use? Never use this word. This is making it chubbier. Okay, but I want to make it skinny. Okay, so I'm keeping it to this. I'm going to set this to open now. I'm going to set it to close on Tuesday, and I want them to have it done before the day starts. So I'm setting it for then. Now, remember that what's going to happen here is if I set it like that, it's very likely these kids are going to get up at 8 o'clock and do the task. You're perfectly within your rights to say Monday, and I want it done by 7 p.m. because you want it done the night before. But you've just got to discuss that with your students and get the right balance. But let's stick with that. I'm going to say Monday, 9 a.m., done. And I want it from now until Monday at 9 a.m. Okay? I'm going to call this Watch 2 Lessons. I'll just keep it nice and simple. And I'm going to bring in my text that I've pre-written, okay? So let's have a look at what I would instruct them. And again, this is what comes into the regularity factor, because I'm going to use these instructions regularly with them, okay? Watch the lot, make notes online, focus on key subject language. Once you've watched, use practice mode for a bit. So I'm going to be consistent with that message. Whenever I set them a watch lessons assignment, that is roughly what I'm going to tell them. I'm going to make it mandatory. And here, I've got the list of both classes here. And I'm going to set it for both groups. Remember that you could set it to all those students, right? Except for Draco. Because he's poorly, because he's got a problem at home. Or maybe you set it for not those three because they're behind in the course, whatever you feel is relevant. You can deselect students, but I'm going to assign them all, bang. That task is now set. But in my mind, that job is not done, okay? All I've asked them to do there is to watch something. In my mind, they're not preloading yet. So I'm going to create a second assignment. I'm going to create a test yourself assignment. I'm going to keep it to the same groups. I'm going to keep it to the same course. I'm going to keep it to the same 2 lessons. I'm keeping it skinny, okay? And all I'm going to do is I'm going to set a passing standard of 80%. That's a nice guide number. You don't have to use that one. And I'm going to set them 10 questions. Same times between now and what did I have? I think it was on Tuesday at 9, was it? I'm setting there. And I'm going to call this a lesson review 10 question quiz. Okay. And this time I'm going to draw in a bit of text, and the text states the following. You must score 80%. Notice the word minimum there. Repeat until you achieve it. If stuck, practice mode. I'm going to set them to allow retakes. I'm going to make it mandatory. And again, guys, I've got my 2 groups worth here. I'm going to assign it to both groups. Now, that, I believe, is a solid preloading pair of assignments for them. Okay, so if we just duck out of this and just be one of the students a second, I'll just be Fleur Delacour a second. I know some of you have seen me demonstrate with Fleur before, so let's keep that consistent. If we just go and be Fleur now, we go into her notifications, you'll see her top 2 notifications here. Watch 2 lessons, lesson review, 10 question quiz. So if she was to go into either of these, but I'm just going to go assignments route, she's got 2 assignments there, 3 days left. Of course, she's been emailed and notified. When she goes into this top one, she's got her instructions. She goes in. She's now taking part in this lesson.
Once upon a time,
crikey, that was louder than I intended.
You were one single cell.
So she's preloading this knowledge in advance for Tuesday. We're tracking and reporting back on this.
37 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 cells.
So all I want to do there is I just want to get 1% or something like that. Let's go back into assignments. Let's go into here. You see here now, I've picked up 2% of that lesson. I'm into that process. Let's imagine now that Fleur has watched both of those tutorials. She's made lots of notes as per the instructions. Okay. What's she going to do then before Tuesday? She's going to go into this test. She's going to get 10 questions. She's got to get 80%. She goes in and she's being asked, look closely at this image, which three letters represent mitosis? So I'm just going to guess, I'm going to say A, B, C. She goes forward and she's wrong. It was E, F, and G. Okay. This one, which phase of the cell cycle is the longest, right? I think it's interphase. Anyway, you get the idea. She's going forward. She's answering these questions. Now, eventually, she's going to get a score, of course. Now, I've done 3 out of 10 questions. I've got 10%. If Fleur was to do that test, get 6 out of 10, then redo it, get 7 out of 10, then redo it and get 9 out of 10, she can consider that assignment completed. Okay. She comes to my lesson on Tuesday. Maybe it's a Zoom call. Maybe in the future I'm back in school. She comes to my lesson. She's studied both lessons. She's proved to me she can answer 8 questions out of 10. Does it mean she's an expert in mitosis and stem cells? No. Does it mean she can write an exam answer perfectly on those subjects? No. But it means in the lesson, now we can have a real good go at it. Okay. So that's what I want to do. Now, if you set preloaded tasks for your students, this is where I have to come across a bit of a taskmaster, I'm afraid. Hopefully you teachers are comfortable with this, right? If you set preloading for your students, you have to have very, very, very close to 0 tolerance to a student going, Miss, I didn't know what to do, right? That cannot happen, okay? We have to have a situation where I set it, they do it. And that's the agreement. Okay, no excuses. If they don't do it in the most supportive, loving, and developmental way, the ton of bricks is coming. Okay, I mean that really positively, but like I'm not letting anything go. Every single task I set, they are doing it. Okay. Now, how you do that, obviously you need support structures around you. You need to have certain disciplinary processes. You need to have the backing of your HOD, of your life, of all that stuff. But I'm going to make an assumption that you have that for a second. But if you set it preloaded, because otherwise you go to your lesson and some know and some don't, and that's problematic. Okay. So you have to have that standard. Now, that's all well and good. Let's imagine now. Let's imagine, and Mark, do jump in if you want me to answer anything, by the way. Let's just go back and be Minerva a second. Let's just imagine that McGonagall now, she's the teacher here, she's now got this situation where these 2 tasks, of course, which students have now started in, look, there's Fleur's work, and this task here that she's got on this one, she's got Fleur's answers starting to come in here. Now, of course, this is all well and good, but she might want to have follow-up here. So we're going to assume that Dr. McGonagall is not going to set assignments during the lesson. She's going to do her own thing during the lesson. But what she's going to do now is she's going to set, well, let's do something differently. She's going to set a task. I mean, I would say this is useful for remote learning. She's going to set a task here that during her lesson on Tuesday, opening, I can't remember what time we said the lesson was, but let's say the lesson was 1 o'clock. During her lesson, she's going to open a task for 1 hour, which is I'm going to just make the name up, during lesson writing task. Sounds exciting. And what she's going to say to the student here is she's going to simply say question 1, and I'm just going to make it very simple. Describe mitosis, okay? And I'm going to say that that's a 5 marker. You'd have better questions than this, obviously. And I'm going to say here, explain the ethical, it's a terrible question, explain the ethical issues of using stem cell treatments. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to make that a 4 marker. I'm going to make that a one-off thing. I'm going to make it mandatory. I'm going to grade it. I'm going to assign it to the whole group. During my lesson now, the students can have a go at that writing task and they can submit that work. Remember that that task is not going to open until the actual lesson. But interestingly, the student can look at what they're going to be writing about in advance. So they can see that in advance. This is what I'm going to be writing about on the day, and they can be thinking that through. So this is not a test, okay? But what I also want to do is I want to cause review with my students. So I'm going to hit a test yourself. I'm going to choose my same groups for consistency, same course. But this time, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce a test, which is this lesson, this lesson, this lesson. I'm now interleaving what's just been learned with previous learning. I also want my students to be reminded of this, this, and this. Okay, I'm interleaving old and new recent learning together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my same standards, 80%. This time a slightly bigger test. I'm going to go 20 questions. I still consider that skinny. But this time I'm going to open this on Tuesday, and it's going to open at 2 o'clock after my lesson. And I'm going to give them until, let's give them until Friday at 4 p.m. So they've got like 3 days to get this done. And we're going to call this a lesson review test. Again, I'm going to throw in that same structure I had here. You must score 8%, repeat until you get it. I'm going to allow retakes. I'm going to make it mandatory. I'm going to assign to all. Okay, so that task is going to open in 4 days. So if we just zoom back and be Fleur just for a second, Fleur now has an interesting picture in front of her. So if we just go and be Fleur, Fleur now has, obviously she can refine her assignments by biology here, but she's got 2 assignments which are opening now. She's got 1 assignment which is going to open at exactly the time of her lesson. And she's got that one, and she's got a 3rd assignment, a 4th assignment, which is going to open straight after her lesson. And it's going to be open for a few days. So what's the teacher done here? They've asked the student to prepare for the lesson. They've included a task for the lesson. It's your choice whether you do that. You by no means have to. You may well just want to do lesson stuff, back in the real world using paper and all those mad things. But we've also started to structure review after the lesson. But this is one of the critical points that I would make to you guys this morning. And I know to an extent I'm going to be sort of teaching you to suck eggs here because a lot of you are studying this stuff at the moment. Remember what Ebbinghaus gave us, okay? Now, if you're not familiar with Ebbinghaus, I'd really encourage you to have a look at this. You're very welcome to have these slides at some point. They even include a picture of Dr. McGonagall just to keep the message consistent. But what Ebbinghaus told us was that once a student has learned something, they forget quite a lot quickly in 20 minutes. They forget even more in a day. And 30 days later, they've forgotten at a rate of about 75%. There are some factors that relate to that, such as the meaningfulness of the information, how rapidly they've learned that knowledge. But the point we can make as a very general point is that students forget things very rapidly. And don't judge your students for that. It's normal human behavior. We also forget things very rapidly. And we're talking about details, key terms, language, definitions, figures, translations. This is the thing we will forget rapidly. So we know that Ebbinghouse's work suggests that 75% of learning will be lost in 30 days if no practice and review is done. So what we want to do is we want to keep the student using that learning over time. So it may well be that this image we've got here for Dr. McGonigal, well, this is Fleur's image. If we see here, it introduces her now. It asks her to practice it in the lesson, and it asks her to review after the lesson. But there's a very good argument that what Dr. McGonigal should be doing, if we just flick back and be her, Minerva, she should seriously consider posting some tasks which encourage the student, I'll go checkpoint route this time, which encourage the students to reuse this knowledge later in the cycle. So this time, I'm going to choose checkpoint 2, which is on cloning, stem cells, mitosis, and chromosomes. And I'm going to set this at 0% standard. And this time, guys, I'm going to set this to open at the end of next week. Okay? And I want my students to do that over the course of that week. And I'm going to call this a monthly review checkpoint. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be at the end of a month. It could just be the end of a 30-day cycle, of course. But here, I'm putting that task in there. No passing standard. Identify gaps in your knowledge. Recommend you have a go at it before doing the test for real. I'm going to deny retakes. I'm going to make it mandatory. I'm going to assign it to all. Now, we've now got that picture of, I mean, again, I'm really sort of overstressing this point. We've got flip learning going into the students. We've got in-lesson practice. We've now got 2 review tasks in the coming days and weeks, which cause the student to reuse that knowledge. And of course, what's going to happen for the student on the end of this? Yes, they're going to be busy. Yes, they've got stuff to do. I think that's good. But thirdly, they're going to be reutilizing this understanding subject vocabulary over time. And by doing that, we cause the student to retain that subject vocabulary for longer. In my opinion, but also in the cognitive science of this. You could also argue, I want to be really careful here because it's slightly controversial. You could even argue that what I've just done there, it honors the work that Thalheimer did around space learning, which is highly controversial in education. Okay, which is if you learn it over a longer period of time, you remember it for longer. Now, of course, there's big issues with that because how do you teach slower? Okay, how do you get your GCSE program in? How do you get your A-level program in? But Thalheimer suggested that if they learn it more gradually, they forget it more gradually. And it even honors that point, that we've got this longer phasing of learning. And my last point to summarize before we look at questions, my last point is this. If we deliver courses, which, and I'll be honest with you, I did this for about 10 years of my career. I've been teaching 20 years. The first 10 years, I did this exact thing. Okay, if we deliver courses, which are we practice in the lesson, do a homework and move on. So I'll restate that. If we deliver, do some work, move on, deliver, do some work, move on, deliver, do some work, move on. If we structure our courses in that way, we should know that they are going to forget that material. Okay, and that's what the research clearly shows us. Now, the assignments allow us to interleave or to keep this old learning going for longer. Okay, and that's very, very impacting. Okay, I'm going to pause for questions there, Mark. I'm sure there's some things you want me to answer.
Yeah, that's fine. Just a few questions. I've answered most of them in the chat as we've been going through. Are you going to show the dashboard view of everything of the results in a minute anyway? So I won't ask you about that. Just a question.
I definitely forgot that.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, so questions about couple of questions about spreads of questions in the checkpoints and where they come from and how they're chosen.
Yeah.
So that one first, and one somebody's asked if you can just demonstrate how to upload a document into an assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. If you set a test or a checkpoint, let's say let's say you choose it like I just did to be 20 questions, and I think it was from 6 lessons. Maybe it was 5, 6, I can't remember. The site will bring questions from all of those areas into that 20 questions. So, of course, if you put 30 lessons in for 20 questions, 10 lessons aren't going to get covered. But in this case, let's say I had 5 lessons for 20 questions, you're going to get 4 questions per lesson that come into that quiz. Now, the other factor to consider is that every test is of equivalent difficulty. So the website brings in different difficulty questions into the quiz so that quiz is of consistent consistent difficulty level. So every episode is of consistent difficulty. And of course, we have 3 levels of questions. They're effectively 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and 60-second questions. And each test will be it will be standardized so that the average question is that 45-second difficulty. Okay, and we do that in batches of 6. I won't go into the actual technique of it, but we do that in batches of 6. So it brings those questions in equivalent difficulty, and it will represent the whole range that you've chosen. Okay. So
just to confirm that the teacher doesn't do any of those choices. The platform chooses all that stuff for you. So there's literally nothing else for you to do apart from just to set that test. Could you just show the oh yeah, there was a document upload thing. If you're all right, show that. And then the next question is the checkpoint curriculum. Can you just show people?
Yeah. So in the checkpoint, so with this one, I think from memory I set checkpoint 2 in here. So this was checkpoint 2. So if you want to know sort of like the scale of that, what you do with that one is if you go over to the course, in this case, I'll go over to the biology course. I'll go over to paper 1. I think it was for triple science we were doing. This is the checkpoint I've set here. And we know here it's 15 questions for 11 minutes. And it's selecting from this, okay? It's not selecting from here. All right, or here. And again, when you set an assignment, so if I set a checkpoint assignment quickly, and if I was to, let me just choose my groups. If I was to choose this checkpoint, for example, it automatically selects those things that it's going to draw questions from. Okay, or if I was to select one way down here and do this one, it's going to select from here, or this one from here, and so on. So it'll give you an indication of what's going to be in there. But the website will distribute those questions to the students. And actually, sometimes we might feel like I want controllability. You know, I want to select that question and that question and that question. But remember, we've got this key pedagogical principle of discriminative contrast. It sounds horrible as a concept, but let's say you set a checkpoint or a test to allow retakes. Okay. The whole point is when the student comes back to do the test the second time, the third time, the test is different. Okay, and that's a really important point, because if you choose the curriculum, you know, I want that one, that question, that question, that question, that question. When they come to redo the test is just the same, and all they need to do is remember the test. And students will cheat that. They'll fly through it the first time just to look at all the answers, and then they'll come in and answer at 100% rate. It doesn't mean they know 100%. It means they've learned the test. Okay, so this way, every time the student sees a question, the only way to be correct is to read it, think about it, answer it. That is the only method to be correct that they have. Okay. Yeah. Right. Upload essay, you said, Mark.
It was to just show whether you can upload a document into an assignment.
Now, I can. I'm going to see if we can be Fleur. I don't have any Word on my computer. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to upload from this.
And then there was a question about the upload essay assignment. I'll come to that in a minute.
So if I go to this assignment, so this is Fleur doing her homework. Now this, so this is not open yet. In fact, sorry guys, I'll quickly zoom back, be the teacher. I'll quickly set that assignment to be open so that Fleur can upload now. But if there's anything else you want me to answer while I'm doing this, Mark, feel free to.
There was a question about differentiation, about whether you can differentiate the tests. So just to clarify that position, really.
Yeah, I mean, the differentiation, I would say there's, again, I'll answer that properly. So differentiation, there's different ways to achieve that. So first of all, if it's a test or a checkpoint, you can set a different passing standard for different students. You can do the equivalent with a watch tutorial, because you could say to one student, I don't know why you would do this, but you could say to one student, I expect you to watch 50%, and another student, I expect you to watch 100%. I'll be honest with you, I would not be comfortable with that personally, because I'm preventing learning, and I don't like that model personally. But if you want to, you can do. The key differentiator I would encourage you to consider is differentiation by seat time. Okay, and what I mean by that is, if you're setting anything which is question-based, test, checkpoint assignment, for example, as long as there's enough time in the open window, let's say a few days or a week, obviously you'll be applying things to your homework policy as well, but each student can take longer or shorter to get to an agreed standard. So again, I realize I'm a bit hard-nosed, but I'm giving you an opinion, not advice at this moment. My model is that I set the passing standard for there will be some exceptions. Every student, I set the passing standard here, but every assignment, I make it skinny, and I make it so that the window's open enough so that if they have to repeat or spend longer on it, they can, but that's the standard. Now, you can probably think of a student who that would be a tough structure for. And of course, you can do it differently for that student, or you can talk to him or her. You can engage with the parents, say why you're doing that. But my model is the differentiation by seat time. In other words, I fix the standard and I say to them, okay, that's what I'm looking for. It's a small task. If you need to take longer or do it more times, that's fine. That's the level. Okay. And what you'll find generally that students will respond to with that is their first response will be like, oh my God, 80%, that's quite a lot. But then they'll go, hang on, this Mr. Sims geezer, he absolutely believes in me. Like, he's not letting go. It's like, if I get 79%, he's going to make me do it again, because he believes I can do it. And if you approach it in that way, the buy-in from students is unbelievable. I completely acknowledge there are exceptions. A student who has a statement of very significant learning challenges, I accept. 80% may well not be the right thing. You may have a student who's going through a volatile, affective, emotional condition. 80% might not be the right message for that individual. I completely agree. But as a general model, I'm setting there and I'm varying the seat time. And obviously, if someone's struggling, I'm going to back them up completely. As long as they're trying, I'm backing them up. I'm supporting them. I'm guiding them. I'm helping them. Okay, so that's my take on that one. Sorry, I've forgotten what I was meant to be doing, Mark.
It was just showing how you could upload and attach.
Yeah. Okay, so here, guys, I've just opened up this task now. I'm viewing as the teacher.
So this is an upload. This, just to confirm, this is an upload essay.
Upload essay. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to upload because I haven't got Word on my machine. But if I go here, let's see what Fleur sees. She goes into her assignments here. There's her task, during lesson writing task. She does a piece of work. So she does her writing. She literally clicks here and she selects her, selects, can I use a screenshot?
Yeah, it's just an image. You can upload it.
Okay. So I put that in there. This is what's going in and I go to there. Okay.
It's worth noting at this point that from a student perspective, that the student can upload multiple files into this, but the teacher will only see the most recent file that's uploaded. That's correct, yeah? Yeah,
but Mark, am I not right? If in this case I've set this as a single take.
Yeah.
So in this case,
they can only upload one.
They don't. So you see, this has now been grayed out because the teacher has set it to one-off upload. So I mean, a rule of thumb there might be maybe have it as multiple uploads just in case someone messes it up and grays out that they upload the wrong file by mistake. Maybe you want to have multiple uploads because students get things wrong, right? They get things wrong.
But the teacher will only see the most recent upload if that's the case. Yeah,
exactly.
Somebody suggested about multiple uploads into one assignment, and the teacher may be able to see all of them. Because they've not got Word. The suggestion I made is in that situation to use an online platform like Google Docs or Microsoft Office Online 365. do the work in there, download the work as a PDF, and then insert the PDF as your submission into the upload essay assignment.
Exactly. It'll accept most file formats. I think
Yeah.
I found out recently that .odt doesn't work, Mark. I don't know if you want
Right, that's
open document type. So I found out recently that one doesn't work, but that's a quite unusual document file.
A good option is to use Google Docs or Office 365 and just download it as a PDF and upload that.
Now, I'm gonna throw something controversial into the mix here, guys. So before I say this, can I stress in advance, I am not endorsing or advocating this model for you. I am simply throwing it out as something to consider and to chew on, okay? So in a very base way, one of the things that I want to do with my students with assignments, and I don't have better words to use than this one, but is I want to cause them to answer thousands of questions over time. That's what I want to do. That's what makes my dashboard very interesting, that live volatile indicator. So I want to cause them to answer thousands of questions over, let's say, the 2 years of a GCSE or the 2 years of an A-level or whatever it happens to be, okay? So this is how I might do this. Again, I realize this is controversial. You do not have to agree with me. So I'm going to go back and be the teacher a second. Let's imagine, where are we now? We're in April, right? We're in April. I'm going to imagine I'm working with year 10s, and I'm going to stick with my biology example, okay? I'm going to imagine that we're in April of year 10 and we've covered most of this course. I'm going to create an assignment. I'm going to create this every single, in my case, it's Sunday, but it could be Monday, Wednesday, whatever day you prefer. I'm going to select my groups. I'm going to select my course. Now, I'm going to put in my passing standard is 80%. And what I'm going to do, let's imagine that we've got to here in the course. Okay. So we haven't covered this stuff yet, but we've got to monoclonal antibodies. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this one. Everything which has gone before, okay? So I'm just going to select all this stuff up. Let's just select the whole thing, all of that stuff there. So I've selected everything apart from, I haven't selected that stuff right down the bottom of this stuff we haven't covered yet, basically. And if this stuff here, I didn't mean to have that on there. We haven't taught that yet. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got 1,200 questions here. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to set that. It would be absolute madness. But I'm going to set them 20 questions. And I'm going to say that I want them to do it between now. Let's imagine that, what day we're on? Friday. Let's imagine Friday is my setting date. I set it every Friday. And I want them to have it done for this time next Friday at 9 in the morning. Okay? And go there. And by the way, what I should do here, I've made a mistake. This should be at 0. Here, I'm going to call this weekly course review. Okay, weekly course review. I'm going to write something in here such as, you know how it works by now. I've got 20 questions, everything we have covered so far, one take. If you've forgotten anything, these quizzes will draw it out. Okay, so again, I'm being very candid with my students there. You don't need to tell them all that. You just tell them 20 questions, get on with it, you know? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it as a single take. I'm going to set it as mandatory, and I'm going to assign it to all my students.
Just a reminder, why did you set that at 0% there?
Okay, so the reason I've set that at 0 there is because it's single take. So this is where I'm given no variability of seat time. The seat time now is fixed. So I'm acknowledging that the achievement rate is going to be variable. But what I'm saying to the students is, you've got to have a go at that 20 questions in the next 7 days once. I'm going to set this task for you once a week for 52 weeks. And look, maybe I'm a total a-hole, but I'm setting that the week of Christmas. I'm setting it the week of Easter. They're doing it. Okay. So what does that mean? That means there's 52 examples of 20 questions. That makes it, unless my maths is terrible, 1,040 questions a year, 2,080 by the time they go through the end of year 9 into year 11, say, for argument's sake. And that is going to continually refine that dashboard so that I know exactly where the strengths and weaknesses of my students are. Now, we have to acknowledge that I've probably just put in 30 lessons into 20 questions. There's going to be numerous lessons not represented there, but over the weeks, they will all get represented. And it's going to show this. If a knowledge is dipping in a particular lesson, it's going to show that to me. And I'm going to be able to go, right, for Fleur Delacour, I've got to intervene on translocation implants or whatever it happens to be. Okay, so I'm going to go, that's where I'm going to put my resources, my time, and my support. Now, this is where I don't think that's controversial, right? But this bit is controversial. Maybe the bit about Christmas is a bit controversial, but this bit is controversial. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying, well, I'm admitting that I do it with my group sometimes. So you could do exactly the same thing. I think you're going to really disagree with me, by the way. You could do exactly the same thing. And from the start of the course, sorry, I didn't select it. From the start of the course, you could select everything. So before they've even learned it, okay, I'm setting them questions on it. And I'm going to do the same thing between now and between next week. I don't think many of you will do this, but I'm going to set it between now and next week. And I'm going to say to them, weekly course quiz. And this time I'm going to say 20 questions from the entire course. Don't worry if you are unfamiliar. This will give you an introduction. Okay, so I'm going to set that for one-off, mandatory, once a week, bang. Now in that model, which is very controversial, what they're going to get now is they're going to get 20 questions a week, and for the majority of the year, they're not going to have been taught the content yet. Now, I think that's controversial. Now, the way I see that is I know my students well. They understand the why of that. It's allowing them to familiarize with language and knowledge they'll need in the future. And they're having a go at it. And they acknowledge that 30%, 40% is a really good score. Okay. And of course, those scores will go up over time. Now, the first version is super safe. You cover once a week that which they've studied. The second version, very provocative. You're introducing them once a week to that which they've done before and that which they'll do in the future. Now, obviously, I repeat again, I'm not endorsing that model, and it could be for specific students and circumstances. Could it be linguists in the room for our native speaker, for example? Could it be in PE teachers in the room? Could it be for A-level biomechanics for the student that's also doing A-level physics? Could that be its use? So I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. Mark, fire away.
Okay, so we're talking about these sort of weekly things. Is it possible to repeat a question about whether it's possible to sort of put those assignments as repeating?
Yes. So the way to do it, there's a nice nifty way of doing that, guys. Okay. So let me show you how.
Then we need to look at the dashboard as well, because
yeah,
quite a lot of questions on the dashboard.
Sure. We don't have what you would call a copy assignment function. Okay. And we just, because I expect it would come up as well in people's minds, we don't have what we call hybrid assignments. And we looked at this very, very closely, where you could set an assignment to have a tutorial and a quiz in one assignment, for example. And we chose not to do that. I actually wanted to do it. I thought I wanted to do it because I thought it would ease, it'd save you a minute's work, basically. But the problem with hybrid assignments is it creates non-meaningful numbers. Okay, so the number of tutorial watching plus quiz score means nothing. Okay, so we keep those numbers separately. So when you look at them in the dashboard, the numbers are accurate and they have a meaning to them. So that's why. But let me show you how you could effectively duplicate an assignment. In your assignments, anything that you've created and has passed goes into past assignments. Okay, so this one here, someone, it's interesting. So I just realized that if you see this one here, Marta's doing a demo this very moment with a school on another Zoom call. So that's just popped in. Yeah. But the point is, all of your assignments go into your past assignments. Now, archived, that means I manually deleted them. Before I did this call, I deleted about 50 assignments, so they're out the way. But any assignment which has come to a natural conclusion, has ended, will have this button on it, reassign. Okay, so any assignment, I'll try and find a test one. Here, we'll do this one here. So this is in AQAPE, it doesn't matter. But this one, I can reassign it, right? So I go into here, I say, right, I want that to be open between now, and I want it to be open between now and next week. I'll keep the same instructions. I'll keep it there. I'll keep it there. And this time, guys, I can just assign it to all. Now, obviously, not my students didn't do this. I can just assign it to all those guys there. Or maybe Fred and George aren't going to do it, but I'll just assign it to all. Bang. That assignment is now recreated in the same parameters. Okay, so if you ever want to effectively duplicate an assignment, you can do it through that reassign function. Can I just give you a tip about reassign though? Be careful not to use that out of, what's the word I want to use? Like for a student who's made an excuse. Okay, when you set a deadline, as long as the deadline's fair, if a student basically says to you, I didn't really do it, reassign is not the answer to that. A disciplinary process is the answer to that. Again, I don't want to come across as vicious, but in my opinion, if a student chooses not to learn, I'm not here to bend over backwards to make life easy for them. Okay, I'm here to say that's the standard, meet it or we're talking. Okay, in my opinion. So I realize, by the way, can I just say, when I'm in my lessons, I'm a really fun guy. As long as they do their work, I love the classroom. I'm really positive with the kids, but if they don't do the work, it's like I'm not having that. I say to them all the time, if I'm setting it, you're doing it, and that's it. Not in that aggressive way, but you know what I mean. Okay, what was the other thing? A dashboard.
Dashboard.
Right? Okay, so
there's quite a few questions on. There's quite a few questions on the dashboard, so sure. I'll chip in as well.
Specific to assignments, Mark.
Yeah, there's questions about reviewing checkpoint attempts. There was a question about 25% extra time as well, which
I'll come to that in a second.
Which kind of comes in through some of the filtering you can do on the assignment on the live data feedback that you get from there. Then there was also another question. Sorry, James. There was also another question about accessing tests and checkpoints from outside the assignment and the warnings around that. That kind of all ties in with this.
I'll show you that. So I'm going to go to assignment dashboard for a start off, and I'm going to go into biology here. The whole idea of this open screen here is for someone who might be a school admin, let's imagine a deputy head, say for argument's sake, can look across the departments using our website and can go, right, in PE, they've created 870 assignments. They've been set to 5,080 times. So there's lots of setting here, but the kids are not doing them. Okay, so obviously that allows them then to dig in and look at that. If we go into biology here, now you've got to remember our kids don't exist, right? So it's kind of normal they're not doing their homework. But if I go into biology as the example, if I go into, there's my group comparison now. So I can quickly see, in terms of the number of assignments set, these two biology groups are doing way more than any other group. So as a course manager, I might want to look at that and think, well, why is Admin Thursday demo group not setting assignments? Okay. Now I can also look at completion rate, which is going to be appalling. The November upload testing group looks pretty decent at this point.
That's because we all did the assignments, isn't it?
Yeah. Now I'm going to go into GCSE. I'm going to focus in on this group and I'm going to focus in on this course.
Yeah.
So I've now got all of these assignments. Now, again, these will be populated with the data that your students produce for you. But if we just look at the ones that I've set, I mean, I've set a lot of assignments for these guys. If we look in here, the assignments that we have just created will come in off the back of this once they've been completed. So once they've ended, they'll automatically come into here. But that assignment mark book is a review of all of the assignments that you've set for those groups. Okay, so that will come in to here. So the whole idea of this is we're trying to prevent the need for you to go, right, I've got my homework scores, let me now write them in to my manual mark book. Okay, you can, if you want, you can still do it, but that's the idea of it. It's to prevent the need for you to do that processing work. Okay, so that's how that assignment worked. What was the other thing, Mark, about checkpoints?
It was about checkpoints. Quite a few questions about reviewing the questions that the students have attempted and doing that and getting that kind of question level feedback and where that comes from and how you can find that data.
Well, let me go back. I'll sort of reset everything, start from the start. So I'm going to go into checkpoints in the dashboard. I'll do it in PE this time. Okay, so I'm going to go into PE as the curriculum. I get all my comparison data. I'm going to go through to the GCSE groups. I'm going to go through to I1 group. I'm going to go through to this course. Now, of course, you wouldn't have multiple courses in yours. This is for demo purposes. But when I come into here, I get all of the review data for the checkpoints. Now, I'm going to show you a really extreme example here. Draco Malfoy, he's done checkpoint 3 of this course 105 times and 105 iterations of that test are here. So this attempt 10 looks reasonably successful. He got 23%. So I go in there, we see he did 1 minute 47, he did 13 of the questions, and I can start reviewing his answers.
So this level of feedback only comes in the checkpoints.
Yes. And Mark, I would say, I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying this publicly. I do think we need to readdress the fact that a test assignment should also produce this feedback.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think we need to do that.
The structures are there, so it shouldn't be too much.
It should be a fairly simple implementation.
Yeah, we can do that.
But in terms of checkpoints, you can come through and you can check every answer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am not of the behavior of doing this very regularly. So
the student gets this feedback as well.
Yeah, they get that feedback too.
Yeah.
I will only go and look at the granularity of question level if I've got a concern. If a student's getting 85, 90%, I'm not going in there. It's like, we're just going on to the next thing. I know the answers are correct. I know where they've come from. Therefore, we're moving on. But if I've got a 55%, a 40%, a 20%, then of course that's where I might go in, probably with the student with me, either virtually or physically when things get back to normal. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. In there, every iteration of a checkpoint is in that view, that checkpoint of the dashboard. And again, if I just reset, we go checkpoints. I'll go into biology this time. I don't have much data in here. I'll go to GCSE. I'll go to this group. And I'll go to here. Here are the checkpoints for that group. And again, I can go to Fleur. She's done checkpoint 5 twice. I go to this one. She did 4 minutes, 15 out of 50. This is actually, I'm pretty sure this is my daughter answering this in this particular case. But I can see the one. So I can go here and I can realize she's got a confusion between arteries and veins. Okay, she's got them the wrong way round. Okay, maybe she doesn't understand the word lumen. So I could go and address that with her. She knows that gaseous exchange happens in capillaries. Okay, so I could go into that, I can be confident that she knows this material and so on. So, and again, this one, however, she managed to get right. So that's interesting. So she recognized what an artery is. So it seems to be that the issue is with the word lumen. Okay, so I might want to address with that student, do you understand the word lumen? I wouldn't ask it in that way, but you know what I mean? I can pick up on that and then I can maybe work with her on it.
Is it possible to show people what it looks like when you try and access a test or a checkpoint that's been set as an assignment from outside the assignment?
Let's do that.
We get quite a lot of teachers asking us. The students have said, "I've done my assignment. I've done the checkpoint or the test, but it's not telling me I've done it."
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, this is the reason why.
Yeah. And I would say, guys, that one of the core philosophies that is part of our service, and again, you have to remember that I approach everything we do as an educator rather than just a commercially driven sort of organization, but we believe the student has a right to access any learning at any time in their qualifications. We believe that every learner is benefited by that right. Okay. Now, of course, a teacher wants to manage that and guide that. So let's imagine you've set an assignment, but Fleur's being a bit kind of confused and she's like, oh, how does that work again? And I'll figure it out. So what would happen with Fleur is she'd go to her courses. I'm missing my assignments. I'll go to our biology example. She goes to paper 1, right? She goes, right, I remember what I need to do. I've been told to do mitosis. Okay, I remember that. That's one of the things my teacher told me to write in my planner. Okay, so she comes here and that's the warning she gets. So this is really specific. This lesson is part of an open assignment. If you want your progress to be registered on the assignment, click to start the assignment. Now, that's what the student should do. In my opinion, if they don't read that and they click here because they're just impatient, I know I'm hardline, but that means in my mind, that means they haven't done their homework. Because in my mind, doing your homework includes reading instructions. Okay. Now I realize that I presented myself as a bit of a bastard, really, but you know what I mean? I want to guide them. I ultimately want them not to need me anymore. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to get into them. So I realize I put in a bit of sort of educational philosophy in here. So what the students should do is they go there and then they're up and running. But if they were to go back, if they click here and start watching this outside the assignment,
upon a time in the
I think that's not doing your homework. Now, is it as bad as refusing to do your homework? No, but you've still not taken care to do your work. So therefore, I would recalibrate that student. Let's put it that way.
Recalibrate. I like that.
Recalibrate that student.
Yeah,
I mean, right. Obviously, there's a style to how you do things. There's a compassion to how you do things. There's a education to how you do things. But there's also do your bloody work.
Yeah. But the whole thing gives you more time to engage in the students in those ways, which is what I think is very powerful as well.
Well, isn't that a great thing to learn about a student? A student wants to do their work but can't be bothered to read instructions. That's a great thing to learn about students, because I'm going to be with Fleur. I'm going to be like, Fleur, read the guidance, all right? Get on with it. You know what happened last time. Make sure you concentrate on this one, you know? So she knows that I'm kind of on her for that behavior aspect. And if I can develop that in her, that's a win, right? So,
sorry, cats.
Cats everywhere. Any other questions, Mark?
Just to confirm, nothing for you to answer really. Just to confirm, somebody asked about the order of questions and answers within the questions, and about the fact that they're randomized every time the question is. So every time the test is run, the questions are randomly chosen from the range. And every time each question is displayed, then the answers, if there's a choice of answers, they're randomly ordered as well.
Yeah.
So it really is a case of they don't just have to remember that it's C, B, A, or which boxes to tick, because everything changes.
The only exception to that is a gap question.
Yes, sure.
That's the only exception. Because a gap question basically has a sentence of some kind, and the students have to write an answer in. So, of course, the gap's always in the same place. With the exception of that, every other question will randomly organise itself.
Yeah.
Do it that way. And again, go ahead.
No, it's fine. The only other thing, the only other thing is about the 25% extra time thing, and we're moving towards that very soon, aren't we? But there's the filtering aspects to it as well. I don't know whether any of the students we've got in the test group have got indicators.
I'll show that now. Although I'm a bit nervous because we've just done some work on this filtering and I haven't used it yet.
It's working, mate.
Yeah.
It's working. Yeah.
What I would say, and Dave Curtis, I don't know if that's Dave Curtis who's up in Yorkshire, who I visited. Well, God, it seems a long time. I think it was November. Dave, is that you? I think it might be you. So let me know if that is you. Hi, mate. How you doing? Nice to chat to you.
Good, thanks.
Good. So let me.
Everyone.
I'll show you the bit about the subcategories for students. Now, I'm just zooming back to be the teacher here. In your user database here, if I go to any student, let's imagine I'm working with, let's do this with Fleur.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I choose Fleur here, if I edit Fleur's details, you see here, I've got these subcategories here. So if we know, for example, that Fleur is a pupil premium student, I can select this. If she's also English as an additional language student, I can select this. And obviously you can select all of them. I mean, or whatever. So you can do that. Now, Mark, this has got to be kind of where I need your help. From this point forward, the key thing to realize then is when you come to the data, you can filter. If I just quickly flick through to this particular group, you can filter your data. Mark, I'm really nervous. I've literally never done this before.
Honestly, it's fine.
So I can filter the data by those factors. Okay, so if I want to look at students with a pupil premium status, that will bring in this case, Fleur's data. Okay, so I get that feedback. And obviously, if I clear selection, it brings everyone in. Or if I want additional English additional language groups, that will bring us. So I can get a snapshot of whether those students are performing differently to the cohort as a whole. So we've done that. And with regard to 25% extra time, guys, I hope it, I'm going to be really candid here. It's one of the things I'm a bit embarrassed about, actually, because educationally is absolutely necessary and right that we provide the teacher the right to add time to assessment periods for students. And if I'm completely honest, I'm a bit embarrassed that we've never implemented that. Mark, am I right in thinking that we've got that really highly prioritized?
It's in the next. It'll be in the next 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're building that at the moment. Now, the way that will work, I mean, Mark, you will work on this yourself, but you will be able to go into a subcategory for a student and add 25% extra time.
Sure. So that subcategory there, the list of subcategories, there'll be another one there that's got 25% extra time. And then that will give students that extra time in all of the different aspects of timed responses on the side.
Now, can I stress to everyone, if you've got a student who you believe should have 25% extra time, or indeed a reader or different factors, can I stress to you that the only time where that 25% extra time is really, really stringent is in test mode.
Yeah.
In practice mode, there's no time restriction. In checkpoint mode, there's variability of time for each individual question. So if one question takes a bit longer, it doesn't matter. Where it could be potentially problematic is in that test mode. So practice mode is utterly free, open, they can spend as long as they want. Checkpoint mode is variability of time per question, so they can spend much more on one question than on another question, for example. So you'll find that there aren't issues. And when we built the website, I know this is I completely acknowledge our need to build this part of the website, but when we built the website, we didn't put a 30-second question as 30 seconds. We put a 30-second allocation to a question we believe would take about 10 seconds. Okay, and then 45 and 60 sort of respectively. So in theory, there's 25% extra time at least built in. Yeah. But in practice, of course, we always want to be able to make the experience different for this group to this group. So that's what we're going to implement. And Mark, I mean, would a lead time on that be? I mean, we're talking next couple of weeks.
It's all set up, ready to go. It just depends on the other priorities. You know, priorities change with things like that. But it's certainly very, very high up in the priority list for the development we've got ongoing at the moment.
Education is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
so that's what we're going to do.
I mean, and all those sorts of things. You know, we're very responsive to feedback from you guys because you're using this platform daily and you see all these different aspects of it. And if there's something that doesn't work quite right, just get in touch with us and we'll obviously, you know, we'll do what we can to sort that out.
One of the reasons we do these calls is actually because we want to hear your opinions and get your guidance. I mean, like for Mark and I, we know the platform extremely well. It's impossible for us to test the platform really, because we know what the button does. We know what the next page is. We know where it goes. But
there's too much, you know. I mean, you've got the biggest user base, the biggest test base possible for us, and without not involving you in that process would be foolish for us as a business and a platform. So we really want your feedback. We want the feedback from the students about what works and what doesn't work. We want to make this platform better for everybody, and you've got an absolutely pivotal role in that from where you're sitting at the moment.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, look, we've taken a lot of people's time, so I'm conscious of keeping you longer, guys. Mark and I will stick around for a few moments. We've got a couple of things in the pipeline that are going on as well. If anybody wants to stick in and ask a specific question, ask us to go over something, feel free. We're more than happy to answer your question. It's very valuable from our perspective to do that. Otherwise, if you'd like to click out and get on with the rest of your day, feel free. I want to wish you a brilliant weekend. I'm going to wish you all the best as well, because I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm finding everything quite heavy at the moment. It's been sort of lockdown, whatever it is, 4 or 5 weeks now. I was kind of enjoying it at the start. It's hit me a little bit this week, and I'm hanging in a little bit. It's part of the reason I've come to the office today, is to try and do something different. But there you go. That's life, I suppose, or at least it's modern life. Guys, we really appreciate your time. Have a brilliant day. Mark and I will stick around. Otherwise, don't feel bad if you head off. Gordon, great to see you. Matt, Tiona, Lily Johnston, Polly, again, two sessions in 2 days. Polly, you're a saint there, really. And Annalise as well. Great. Annalise, I'm kind of intrigued by your name, Annalise Reed-Muller. I could be wrong, but I'm wondering if you're from a part of the world which is sort of in between France and Germany, maybe Alsace or something like that. I'm wondering.
Well, actually, Reed-Muller is my husband's name, and his granddad, I think, was from Alsace. But so spot on. But then my dad, I don't know how. I think Annalise is a German name, but I have no German origins at all. My mum was English and my dad was French.
Got you.
So when you hear my name, you think maybe German, but no.
That area of Alsace is beautiful. I'm a big fan of Strasbourg, for example, around there. It's a really beautiful city.
I've never been.
Oh, you should go. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's one of it's got little, not architecturally, but it's got a little feeling of Amsterdam to it, because you've got like these circles of, I think it's river rather than canal, but you've got this sort of this river management system which makes sort of river circles around the city and what have you. Lots of bridges, lots of cycling.
Nice. I'll have to go there when
you should
free us again.
Yeah. Well, imagine if that happens. Yeah. Well, some holidays. Who knows what the hell's going to happen in the coming days? So, yeah, we'll see. Nice to see you, Annalise.
Nice to see you too. Thank you. All of these sessions have been really useful. So
cool.
yeah, cracking on. We've started at the Bourne, so we've already seen work, and it's really awesome. So thank you so much.
You. Well, we're trying. I mean, I enjoy these sessions personally. I hope it comes across. I don't know. With what we do, of course, there's a business interest and there's a commerciality later, down the line or whatever. But hopefully it comes across. Our business is cored with educational. It's called by teachers, really. So we're kind of a blend between a tech company and an educational company. So I think it's fair to say, Mark, we tend to lean towards the education a little bit. We tend to lean in that direction. Yeah. But I think that's what makes it hopefully valuable for teachers. So,
and we're here and we're available and we're small and responsive and all those things that that make us unique, I think, in the field.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of examples where companies maybe do something similar, but there's been a very sort of technological kind of fast tracking methodology just to get something out. Like the cost effectiveness, do it as cheaply as possible, as mass market as possible. And I think you can see why, as a business strategy, that makes sense. But when you then look at the end user, it's not as impacting. So we try and do the right thing anyway. There you go.
No, it's great. So thank you.
Thanks, Annalise. Have a good one. Have a good weekend.
Cheers. Thanks, you too. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Is that Violet there? It is Violet there. How you doing, Violet? Are you with Violet? Was with us yesterday. How you doing, Violet? Can you hear us?
I think she's gone. She's just sitting very still.
Frozen. If you can hear us, Violet, we've got an amazing photo of you that's frozen on the screen, just to annoy you. But
are you sending the recording of this out, James?
Yeah, I'll send the recording. Yeah,
that's fine. Somebody just asked before. That's all.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's sign off. Hey, Violet,
there she is.
We got you back. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing? Let me unmute you.
Very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Violet, remind me whereabouts you are. I always forget.
We're in North London, Enfield.
Okay. I live near London. I really need to get to know London better. There's so many bits of London I don't know. I've got to know the west and the south of London quite well recently, but North London I don't really know at all.
That's the best.
Yeah, it's best bit. I just always drive around it. I often go past North London, but I very rarely stop in North London.
What's that? The M25?
Yeah, well, I'm often doing the journey either round and up the M1 or round and up the A1. That's quite a common, or even the M11. That's quite a common route for me. But the last time I was in North London, I'm trying to think. I was at. I've been probably last time I was there was Haberdasher Aske's school.
So that's what? Hertfordshire? No.
Yeah, I think so. It's off. I'm trying. Is it off which junction?
One's all up there, all Edgware.
Yeah, it's up that it's up that way. So that was the last time. That was a few months ago. But I just don't know that part of the world at all. Really, I need to familiarise.
No,
it's funny. I probably know the topography of Spain and France better than I know.
You certainly know the accents.
Accents, I'm good at. Yeah,
incredible.
All right. I can. Yeah, I don't know. I have a bit of an accent ear. I don't know why. The thing with accents, I think, like especially in English, you can identify pretty closely where someone's from to the town. Like, I don't think people realise how sensitive accents can be. I'm not so good in Cheshire ones, Mark. To be fair, I know you were.
Well, I've not got a Cheshire accent at all.
Yeah, well, I would know your Manchester way, but I couldn't be specific in your case.
No, I've morphed. My accent has morphed. It used to be a lot stronger than this. But the kids used to take the mickey out of me so much at the school I used to work at that I've kind of tampered it down a bit. So it used to be a lot stronger than this.
Cheshire's got a bit more of a blend. It's got a bit of Scouse in there in Cheshire.
It has, yeah.
I noticed that before.
They miss a lot of words out when they're speaking as well.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, let's
okay, guys.
great to see you, Violet. A. Scott Manning, cheers. I've got a feeling that's Adam, but I might be wrong. I don't know if if A. Scott Manning wants to click in. I'm not sure if
I don't know whether he's still there. He's gone very quiet.
Might just not know he's on a call.
Might not.
I'm going to unmute him.
We'll just have to end
Oh,
it.
no.
She. It's a she, and it's
Oh,
Anne.
Hi.
Anne, I'm so sorry. I thought I knew someone called Adam Scott Manning, but I was obviously wrong.
No, there's not many Scott Mannings. I've created that myself, so it's Anne.
How are you, Annie?
I'm fine, and I'm in South East London. Haberdasher's Ass is near us,
Okay.
New Crossway.
okay.
So
No,
South East London.
No, then there must be another one because Habs Boys is up in. Hang on, I think we work with 3 different Habs schools because I think there's a bit of a network of them. And the one I went,
there's another one in New Cross though, but
yeah, the one I went to was just north of Wembley somewhere.
All right, no, we're definitely not near Wembley.
Yeah.
You know,
And where do you work then, Anne?
I work in New Cross in a school called Deptford Green, so that's sort of New Cross or near Greenwich. That's where I'm from. So yeah, it's the southeast of London.
What do you teach, Anne?
I teach science. So just teach science, and I've been teaching now. This is coming into my 26th year.
Wow, that's great.
But I did a lot in special needs as well. So I've kind of left science, went and did Senko work, and I've gone back to science. So and enjoying it.
Cool.
That's good. It's there's a lot to get through in those courses. I mean, I notice really with the science courses and the languages that the MFL courses are ludicrous in terms of content range. But I think that what I notice in those GCSE courses, especially in biology, there's a lot of content, and then you've got the challenge of the skills, the formula, and the mathematics, especially in physics, and that sort of more abstract understanding. I found a lot of students struggling with that recently.
I think trying to do really three courses in 2 years is just crazy.
Yeah.
The amount of language and where we are in kind of, quite a deprived area. We've got some amazing students, but you've also got some students that really, really struggle with language, maths, everything. So it's hard work, but it's worth it. They love it.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've been teaching a bit of science recently, and I really enjoy it. I taught a lot of PE in my time, especially at A level. I find I enjoy the rigor and the challenge of the biology courses. I mean, they're good, but they're very broad. I mean, I would say that. I mean, one of the very narrow sections, interestingly, in that AQA course is viral disease. I wonder if that's going to get a bit more attention next time we'll discuss.
I've been actually setting the kids loads on it at the moment and trying to relate it to what's going on, so that we were teaching it before this kind of happened, and now you're going, right, do you remember when I told you about the development of vaccines? Do you remember? Now you actually can know, and you can watch one of those government reports and see why this is really fast moving compared to what we've been taught, and thinking of computer modeling and the assessments and testing. So if anything, it's bringing it to the fore to show that actually science, it's not the boring subject. It's every part of everyone's lives, and we really need to know it.
And that immune system section as well, and the non-specific stuff is also really interesting at the moment in relation to what's going on as well. I mean, I remember teaching those lessons and think, like, it's quite hard to get a student to really sort of think about TMV or even HIV to an extent.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be hard anymore to get sort of a real kind of human sense of it,
Well, my job prior to teaching, so I'm a bit of a grown-up, was as a nurse. So the way I bring it in is actually talking about working as a nurse and working with patients and working in, conditions where you're dealing with infectious diseases, and when you can really give them real life experiences and ideas. And I nursed at the kind of beginning of HIV in hospitals really sort of taking off.
Wow.
And you can talk about it like that. It's quite interesting to bring it to life for the kids.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you do that, then they buy in.
That's really good. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think, it's. I didn't teach on the previous specifications for the GCSE biology, but it is quite narrow, that immunization or that immunity stuff, and the stuff on viral, the disease section in general is reasonably narrow. But I wonder if that might might change going forward. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of bringing that sort of human sense to that kind of learning. It's going to be very graspable for people, but kids are going to remember this very, very deeply, very intuitively over time. You know, I mean, it's especially if this continues for the extended period of time it appears it's going to last for. I think it's going to be a very, very strong a very significant feature in a child's memory, really.
Yeah.
At home, I mean, Mark's got kids as well. I mean, we have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. Got 15-year-old in year 10 who we're quite worried about how that's going to play out in the coming weeks and months. So we'll see.
Well,
we'll see what
it
happens.
will affect their GCSEs next year.
Sure.
You can't imagine that they're going to go on and do. It's all going to go back to normal. I've got two boys. I've got identical twins who are in year 11.
Right.
And it's massively affected them, and you know, you really feel for them because we've had this massive build up. Right, come on, revise, you're doing your GCSEs, bang, gone.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is going to be problematic for the present year 11 and year 13, especially year 11, is that one of the things that you learn most from is not just the content, the skill you learn from the subject, but is also the experience of managing that experience of going through the exams. It's a real life lesson. Now, of course, it can be damaging in some cases, but in most cases, most people, they meet the challenge, they cope, they get through it, and they succeed. And that, of course, builds a certain self-perception, a certain behavioral set. And there's going to be a lot of kids who that level of rigor and challenge, they're not going to get that. And you know, even if you look at it from a child converting from GCSE into A-level, say, one of the reasons you succeed in an A-level is because you've got that history of succeeding in the GCSE assessment structure. Now, we can have a conversation about should we be using exams and is it objective and now, but the point is, if we're using that system, those year 11s have just completely lost that experience and that gain that they get from that, and they can't use it going forward. And I think that's a problem.
It's a stepped process. It gets harder each time. But if you took one step, you know that you've only got to jump up again one step to the next one.
Exactly.
So going from, you know, GCSE to A-level, which I'm really worried for my own children, and then on, you know, will they cope with it? Yeah, and that's the worry. But anyway, thank you.
Great to meet you, Anne. Great to
we'll
speak
be in
to you.
touch.
Catch you later.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
And you, bye.
Hello.